Hi everyone, I'm Abhijato, the writer and director for episode 4, which you're currently watching, hopefully alongside the episode on YouTube right now.
Hi, I'm Hiya. I was assistant director for episode 4 and I play Tanvi.
Hi, I'm Vikram. I created the show and I also co edited this episode.
Currently, it's a flashback of everything that's happened so far.
Go watch the other 3 episodes.
Yeah, go watch the other 3 episodes. Oh, yeah, that reminds me, this is technically like a season 2 premiere. So, hey, happy season 2!
Happy season 2!
Yay.
And we shot both episode 3 and 4 in the same semester. It was quite a challenge logistically, but here we are.
Almost within a month now that you think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we start with a montage. It was probably one of the first scenes conceived in the writing stage itself where we kind of wanted to shift the focus away from Bombay a bit in season 2. Not to kick her out completely, but just to show how she is parallel to other people. And I think this montage does it pretty well, where she's hurrying Gayatri along while Tanvi's taking a sweet old time.
Brushing shot very reminiscent of the first episode of Bombay.
This mirror scene was a pain to get on the day off. In fact, for both days, this was probably shooting wise one of the most intense 2 days because of just how many shots we had to get in. Even though it's a relatively short scene.
It's very hard to squeeze a camera person and an actor within the confines of a closet and have someone direct you at the same time.
Yeah.
It was fun. I got eyeliner everywhere on me that day. Not very pleasant.
I like the little flip that Tamanna does while Mika drags her.
Mika was unfortunately a little injured while doing the running in their knee, and there was still a trooper and they did this scene.
It was really cold too.
It was really cold. And on the other side, Tanvi just walking into the lift. We kept pressing the button on our floor, waiting for it to come for 3 minutes and then getting a 10-second shot in a hurry.
And being a menace and putting it on hold sometimes as well.
Yeah.
I have said this many times before and I will say it again. I think she's absolutely insane for taking her cup of tea out into the world like that.
But it's like a cup of tea, come on.
It's also a power move. Here I am, I'm taking my sweet time and you're waiting here, God knows where, and I've got my tea with me. I am going to sip my tea while I blackmail you. This is just Tuesday for me.
After the very packed opening credits of episode 3, this was a relatively chiller cast and crew, which allowed the team to be tighter in the sense that there were just less people, so more of them had to pull up. And I think it worked very well because even the scene is very emotionally complicated, so having back-to-back shooting with the same set of people and camera people as well as the actors really helped. I think in the episode there's just the quality of it being a little intense, even in scenes that are more emotionally charged, which I think happened because, especially with Tamanna and Mika who play Bombay and Gayatri, they shot all their scenes in 4 or 5 days, which is really insane considering how they are half the episode.
What do you think the challenge was of directing the same people for hours on end and then sometimes on consecutive days as well?
It's not a challenge. I think at least the two of them made it really easy because they've just gotten so comfortable with their characters that you just tell them the story and they roll with it. One thing that did happen with it being kind of tight was because we shot the scenes out of order. At times it was kind of difficult keeping track of where what motivation takes place because there's a huge character arc for all of them, right? Anyway, in this scene, this is probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire episode already. Pooja, who's our other AD, and then there's Taco and Priti, both of whom were incredibly kind in giving us time. We wear our influences on the sleeve, but the first thing what me and Vikram said to each other was oh yeah, Better Call Saul. We are gonna be inspired by how they do this slapstick kind of shooting scene.
And Gayatri does a pretty good job with the campaign ad here. Yeah. And Bombay had surprisingly good chemistry with these three as well. I mean, I know Mika's friends in real life with Taco as well, but Yeah, the banter here and the annoyed older figure really came through.
And we shot this first half of the episode of the scene kind of in a one take. Like we did 2 or 3 takes, but like we kind of wanted to keep the annoyance going by like focusing on one single angle where Bomb is just trying to get in. And I think with the music especially it works well. Also, I don't know if you can see in the background, but sprinklers are going off. And we had come here after like shooting a couple of scenes in the day already, and we were like, oh yeah, let's take like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. We've got these extras. We have asked them to keep their afternoon free, and we'll have like a good time shooting this fun scene. And I had so many angles and ideas. And then we walked there, and we realized that everyone's already in the scene. But yeah, sprinklers just go off, and then like 2 or 3 bhaiyas working on the field just go, oh yeah, we are sprinkling the entire field.
Also, shadows while recording. Our shadows, because we were holding mics, camera people's shadows. It was a lot of work, I
Yeah,
think, trying to shoot this. Yeah.
I think this was the one. There were a few scenes throughout the episode, but in this particular episode, we really had to just kind of lock in for this. Like we didn't have the time to be like, oh, okay, let's relax, pull out a couple of chairs, check the footage. And I think it worked out like incredibly well, considering we had like 50 minutes to shoot a 3-minute scene. And props to Gayatri. All of the takes you see here are from basically one take. In the end, where Ayushi, one of her camera people, had like kindly given a podium and camera to shoot this. And the sprinkler was coming menacingly close, and we were out of time. And she just kept looking at us like, "Can we please stop?" And then like Gayatri had to like perform through that, which kind of added to it.
I love the little green car going in
I
the
know,
back.
right?
Yeah.
So funny.
I think it's always kind of interesting because you see these people just like students and workers on the campus just like walking around the scene, and usually there's continuity, but you just go like, oh, they're a part of campus life even if you don't like directly see them in the show.
I think you were very interested in exploring that all through 4, right? With like the wide shots and getting people around the campus.
Which is, I think, like that scene which we just saw was particularly interesting to me because like you just see the lush greenery, and like I really had a thing for like getting trees into the shot, and I'll like explain when it comes later. But just establishing a bit more space. Ki, oh yeah, we are in a campus, and there is a driver dragging garbage in the background, and there is a sprinkler going off. Owning that space. Which is why even here, like that symmetry in the middle, I asked Ayushi, again the camera person, to like keep that angle specifically so that we can see them being on opposite sides. And a huge shout out to Pratyush, who really just came around for these couple of hours and was a really enthusiastic person on set.
And took direction really well.
Yeah, it's actually insane how exponential the improvement was. Like, you already started off well, and then you told him these very specific micro notes, and he kept taking them in like this single.
Yeah, every
Yeah.
take he delivered it differently, which was super cool. And it was so nice to work with him.
This was actually probably the last scene that we wrote. This was like done.
Oh right,
Yeah.
I remember,
It was me,
remember.
Vikram, and Manya, our other co-writer, just sitting in a room and writing this after Vikram had like slept for like maybe an hour.
Why?
Well, we had set that deadline for ourselves to get the script ready for the table read, so we're just going through the final revisions. And yeah, this scene, like, we thought of it a little bit before, but yeah, this version of it is written basically the morning of.
These are the trees that I'm talking of.
Also, yes, I wanted to say this earlier also, the B-roll slapping.
Yeah. The fun thing is that specific B-roll came while we were doing a reshoot for episode 3. Long after episode 4 was done. I just like grabbed Ashwin to a corner and was like, hey, shoot some trees there. Huh?
Good to know, guys. He's a fan of Drive and Kill Bill and The Pianist. Mega mind too. Yeah, it's always nice to see my own movie posters in the show.
I have a soft corner for this scene in my heart because I think it does slow the pace down a bit, but I also feel like these Gayatri Bombay scenes really add a lot because they're talking about their parents for probably the first time in such a like elongated manner. But I think it really drives to who they both are as people, which is why I feel like for those paying attention, it's just like such a characterizing moment. We're kind of realizing that Bombay kind of wants to get away from the toxic relationship that a mother and father might share with each other, whereas Gayatri is still trying to like be in that space because she's obviously the younger sister who's stayed in that house for much longer, but also she's realizing I kind of want to break away from my parents and I don't know if I want to be a part of their toxic mess anymore, which is why she's like a little hesitant throughout whenever she's giving news about her family to Bombay. And I think it's kind of parallel how in the episode, as you'll find out if you're watching it with the episode, that Gayatri is kind of also wanting to break away from her parent figure in the form of Bombay, and later when Rehan approaches her. So it's because so far in the series she's constantly been supervised and she's constantly gotten into their toxic messes because she really cares for all of them. But here she tries to make a clean break by the end of the episode because, as you'll see, it kind of gets to her and she wants to be her own person.
Also, I love both these angles, this one and the previous one. Honestly, like especially when the camera was like, I remember I've only been on set for this episode maybe 1 or 2 days, very briefly, but I came in while you guys were shooting this, and I remember seeing the camera on the laptop, and I was like, what are they doing? But but I'm really glad it worked out.
Yeah. I remember at one point Tamanna looked at me mischievously and she was like, Vikram never allows us to look at the camera and now you're just like shoving it into our faces.
That's not true. Episode 3 there's a lot of
He's beating the allegation.
maybe not with Tamanna, but a lot of other actors got to do a lot of camera staring in episode 3. So I would myth bust that right here.
This was also a really quick shoot.
Mm-hmm.
I think this took like around 90 minutes.
Why don't you guys talk about the
yeah.
Bollywood music?
I think this scene was really a problem, kid, because we'll come to the editing later if we have the time, but just on the day of the shooting, we were shooting during fumigation, which is basically this 2-hour long period where everyone's kicked out of their hostels so that they can smoke out the place. And the music club decided to hold a meeting right in front of us, and they're really sweet and kind people, but they were blasting music on full volume. And while we were shooting, we just looked at each other being like, there's no way we can actually pull this shoot off. But again, the people were there and midterms were nearing, so we couldn't really hold the actors for much longer. So I was just like, guys, let's see what happens. And then we used this app called Dolby On, and it filtered out most of the music. Obviously it's not perfect, but considering we did this in like, I don't know, like 50-60 minutes, like probably 70 minutes,
short.
And we got multiple angles in, which sure, it does break the 180 degree rule, and you kind of go all over the place, but I think it kind of adds to it because as long as the shots are consistent, you kind of get this like triangular shape, which I really wanted to preserve, where it's Tanvi on one side and two really pivotal members of the Congress on the other side. And yeah, there's this overhead shot with the two tigers looming over the two people who are being preyed on, you know. Yeah. I remember, like, this is obviously in one of our academic blogs, and I just looked at the two paintings and the 3 chairs, which this chair was on, the sofa was on the other side of the wall.
Yeah.
It was like, even if I have to like drag it all the way, I'm gonna set up the scene here. So yeah. In fact, throughout the episode, we had a lot of logistical challenges, which you don't really get to notice that much in the episode. But yeah, we kind of powered through them.
Yeah. This was shot on a completely different day,
Completely.
like randomly.
Yeah.
Abhijato was like, come. Now go stand and text something.
This is probably like the crew favorite, at least when we shot it.
Direction, just keep walking. Just walk.
Yeah.
But it's a very cool looking corridor, so
Yeah. The shot of the camera staring up. I don't know how well it translates, but the idea was to like make the walls and the windows seem like just these eyes looking down at Gayatri throughout, which is why even the montage ends with the camera looking up towards the windows, because she's constantly being seen and surveilled for the first time in her life. Which again comes back to the influence of, you know, how what do you do when there's so many people just telling you what to do all the time.
This is so good.
the ambulance was just passing us by and we were like, hey, sit down. And I'm like, yeah, waited 2-3 takes. We waited at that spot being like, wait for another car to come along, and it did.
Oh, and there's an Ashoka logo here that was digitally released, but I think After Effects it took pretty.
Who's that?
Director cameo. And you know, I don't know, like, look, there was a tree in almost every white shot because I kind of this was shot around pseudo autumn, like most of the trees on campus had like shed their leaves, and I just wanted to kind of play with this idea, especially because I think like a lot of greenery on campus is a little artificial. About how, you know, despite you sprinkling water all around over the place, there's just so much fallowness to like what she's doing right now, which is like trying to fight for power. Because even though she doesn't realize the lesson in this episode, I think Bombay kind of does, at least even if she doesn't show it, where she kind of realizes going down this route will like kind of make you lose all your fertility for life. It might seem like a convoluted metaphor, but it's just very powerful to me.
This is the longest scene, right?
This
In the episode.
This was even longer. Vikram kindly edited it down a lot, and at first I was like, no, don't cut it down, you know, it's such a nice scene. And then when I was seeing it on the screening day, I was like, thank God it was cut down, because I was still like, why don't they get to the point? But to be fair to the episode, I think we have music that works really well with the scene, and it just kind of adds to a menace that kind of justifies the runtime now. Also, I wanted to like point out a few of the shots here because it parallels later in the episode. So we start off with this low angle, and obviously it's not even gonna be rocket science. But this was my first day shooting as a director, and I was really focusing on the visual element here. And there's just sort of a divide here which we begin with. And I'll keep pointing this out, and we'll come to them later. And both the actors were like, "Why don't we move closer to each other just because, you know, it's a little unnatural for us to sit this far." And I was like, wait, it's like a 6-7 page long scene. Give it time, you'll come together. So I think it works well here because like you can kind of see the distance between the two of them right now, even as they're, you know, trying to be a bit bantery, and Rehan's the more experienced person while Gayatri's trying to keep up with him. But there's just these awkward pauses which we really focused on while editing this, just to make people know that she takes a bit of time. She's still getting used to the game.
How do you decide what's worth keeping and what do you cut, especially when you're looking at even pauses and things like that?
So you can't get rid of anything that's plot, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of plot in this episode, so it comes down to like character exposition, which is always a hard decision to take because they're already talking so much about the plot. You need a bit of like humanity there to like kind of balance it out. But also when you look at it as objectively as you can, you realize that sometimes they do go a bit overboard, in the sense that I'm getting a lot of plot as well as a lot of character. So the decision there was to like cut down on the character part of it because there's already a lot of plot here. And you can do the character work elsewhere. Like for example with Gayatri, it's a clear-cut answer of her doing 3 separate scenes where she's talking about her parents and Bombay and everyone. So she doesn't really need a lot of character exposition here besides her own dialogue, showing that she's a bit of an amateur.
It's also, if something is already conveyed in the episode through one way or another already, it's often unwise to repeat things to the audience, even if it is convenient. So if something is like, if like Gayatri says XYZ here and later on in the episode she says XYZ anyway, or it's already implied, then we might as well get rid of it here unless there's some reaction that Rehan has to it that's important, right? So that also plays a factor when you're just deciding what's more important than the other thing.
I also wanted to like bring focus to this shot because again I think it's parallel later in a scene where it's kind of this like low angle where Rehan, played by the great Vatsal Kumar, is like so menacing and like almost like unnaturally tall, where he's kind of getting cut out of frame, and like he's just so artificially tall because they do have a height difference in real life. But like the fact that he's towering over her and in the frame kind of really speaks to how they've shifted from this divide to them being close now. But it's very clear that Vatsal's the one who's in control here. So yeah, what were you saying?
No, I was gonna ask again, when you're editing and making these decisions of, okay, if it's implied, there's no need to write it. That involves a lot of trust in your audience as well, right? So I don't know, how do you approach that?
Sometimes you can be paranoid about, will people get this, will people understand, will people, see what I'm trying to say, what the character is trying to say. And then other times you just should not give a shit. because you're creating a good product, and as long as you know it works, then even if someone who watches it does not understand and maybe takes like, maybe they'll watch it again like a year later and then see like, oh, now I get it and I didn't before, then that satisfaction is good enough, because as long as it's there, as long as the product is good, you can't really, think about, oh, how will it taste to someone else. I've cooked a good meal. I can't really think about, different people have different palates. That's that too. Some people will just not get certain things, and that's okay. You gotta live with it. For example, in the third episode, Teshi, who says the line about the 3 poisons of Buddhism, did not get until after the after party of the screening that the 3 poisons were the 3 chapters of the episode, right?
Yeah.
And she said the dialogue, but her friends got it in the screening. So yeah, you just gotta live with it.
Yeah, and I also think it kind of goes back to directing as well, because while I was writing it and then while I was annotating the script before I started shooting, I realized there's just 1,000 different directions in which you can go with this episode and the direction, but you can't overwhelm either the audience or the actors with all that you have in the script, and you kind of have to trust that when people watch it again, because I think film, especially the medium where they do come back to it, like you can and you should ideally if you like a piece of art. You just like focus on certain motifs. So again, like I said, I think for Gayatri it's a question of power. For Bombay it's a question of truth and manipulation, and what does she think of herself as a person when she betrays those closest to her. And it keeps coming up and cropping up thematically in conversations. Like they talk about their parents 3 times because the hereditary nature of like, manipulation and like violence and whatever, like sibling violence or whatever. Like these things you want to drill into the audience's head, and that's the note you give to the actors on set as well, and that you can repeat as like a motif basically. Whereas with something like, say, Rehan coming up as someone who is not from that privileged background, it's a neat bit of character, but it'll like slip past you if you don't attend to it carefully, and you kind of have to live with that because there are more important things you want to talk about, which brings me to probably my The tree! I remember both the actors being really confused and me being with Anaga at the opposite end of this roof. Just being like, you guys act. Like, I want to get this shot in first. And a lot of people said that this was the favorite shot of the episode. And again, it kind of continues the motif. And Hiya, who plays Tanvi here, really pulled up with the acting. Like,
wonder if she was here to hear your praise, but yeah, I hope she knows wherever she is. But yeah, this scene will haunt me forever because of the audio. I'm almost glad we can't hear it right now during the commentary. But I mean, I think it was salvaged for the most part, especially right now in this part. And later on, of course, when the two of them get close to each other and start screaming, then we don't really need mic audio because it's perfectly fine the way it is. But yeah, there are parts of this scene that have driven me insane, and I wasn't even there on set.
Yeah. You could have seen it from this angle. Yeah, if you look at the code placed there, or the jacket or whatever.
That's what the mic is.
It's a telltale even in episode 3. Like wherever you see Mika's jacket or like a jacket in general, there's probably a mic hiding underneath it. These are the things you have to do when you have a lav mic and you're on a zero budget.
What was I pulling out here in real life?
It was the script for a play I have directed this semester too, called Take 2, which will be on YouTube soon as well.
Oh my god! No. We can't do a plug during an episode commentary. I'm sorry.
For the 5 people to this part,
I gotta listen.
You could draw a line.
Listen. At least 100 people watch the commentary for each episode, and I gotta draw a line somewhere.
Guys, don't watch it. I take back everything I said.
You take back everything? You take 2 back everything?
That was so bad.
It's horrible.
It's okay. I'm just trying to get past the scene, guys.
I think the skyline here I remember Vikram distinct. He has this very particular look when he's disappointed in you, but he's trying to be a good person and encouraging you. He just looks at you and he goes, "What were you thinking shooting against the sunlight?" But after amping up the brightness a bit, like you can see such a beautiful skyline and you can see Bombay's face. Sometimes you can have victories. Another dub will come very soon at the end of the scene, but I'll come to it later. I like this low angle as well.
Yeah, this is a good shot too. I like the imposing wall and the tree. Everything works in that.
And the fact that there's no windows here, when you think about it, this is kind of a discreet conversation where they're away from whatever campaigning in public Gayatri is doing.
I took forever to get up and you attempted to make it faster. I loved acting in this scene. I think Mihika and I kept going back and forth with each other and trying to see how angry we could get. And I did this thing where they had the documents that I'd given them and I would slap them at a particular line. And I got so used to doing that in every take that there was one take where they hadn't kept the folder in my reach to slap. And they realized that the line was coming and reached it out so that I could slap it. But yeah, I just loved shooting this scene. It was so much fun. And then Abhijato has an idea for a different shot that you'll see now.
But that one line that you say right now, "What would you do without my help?" is exactly how Rehan says to Dhingra, "What would you do without my help?" in episode 2.
Oh my.
And that's
This
just such a
shot.
perfect mirror.
This shot was such vindication for me because we were trying to shoot a through the window shot throughout the episode, and this was the last day of shooting when we were doing it. And I distinctly remember both my IDs looking at me being like, "Come on, man! Grow up. You're not getting a classy high budget shot through a window." And every time I tried it, it would look awful, and everyone would just shake their head and disappointed at me. But then we were almost done with the episode, and I had gone out for some reason. I was like, "Look at that window!" And I think the sunlight was with us. Even with this scene, I think Vikram told me one thing, get more low angles in. So I was like, might as well have fun with low angles. I think we were having a bit of trouble getting a good angle to shoot the scene.
It was a very awkward room area as well. Yeah.
We were shooting right from the corner and there's a bunch of shells right behind which you don't see. So we came to the other end of the 180-degree line and then we shot from this low angle.
A lot of sitting down and squatting for the two of us, Abhijato and I, handling mics in this scene.
Yeah.
Must be reminiscent.
We're right
of
down
old times.
there, we're there.
Yeah.
But the cameras.
At one point, there was a scene at the right corner. This is not the take we use, but in the right corner, there's a mic there and Tamanna's hiding it. And then when Tamanna gets up, the mic's just there in plain sight. And I don't notice it at first, but then I'm like, wait, what's happening? Why is there a mic in this pivotal shot? And here, as if no one will notice, just silently tries to drag it away, and you can just see the mic crawling away. And then I just go what's happening? And then the take cuts abruptly. You thought I wouldn't notice.
No, I want to see that now. I want to see that.
Yeah, we should have kept that in. I really love how this entire scene looks though. This setting combined with even the clothes they're wearing, and especially Rashi's camera.
Yeah.
It really, I don't know, it looks kind of almost hospitally, but it also sort of reminds you of that scene. You remember in Harry Potter when he dies and talks to Dumbledore in his head?
In that weird heaven version.
Yeah, but Bombay's the evil Dumbledore here. She's just giving bad advice. but yeah, I mean, this scene came out really well. It looks really good.
A lot of it is down to Rashi's camera. It has the biggest lens you will ever see.
The lens is bigger than the camera only.
Yeah.
It protrudes out.
And one very fascinating thing about color correcting this is when you look at Rashi's footage, you go, this is so incredible. And then you just bring down the white balance a bit and you push up contrast and it looks 100 times better. And it just speaks to the quality of having a good camera on set.
Yeah. It gives you a ton of more options in post when you have a good camera.
Yeah. Even if it looks too dark or too white, even if you color correct it with contrast and brightness, it doesn't lose the quality that might happen with a lesser camera.
But no camera is lesser in our minds.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, because I think despite the this looks cinematic and there are other scenes where you're oh, I can see motion blur. But I think it always adds to it, because as long as you're conscious about using the same quality of a couple of cameras when you're shooting with two in the same scene, it holds up. And I think when the audience is invested enough in the story and the acting and the music and the editing, they're not looking at camera quality and being like, oh, that's like a little pixelated. Like it's not. You can tell a good story even without the best camera in the world, but you can't tell a good story if you just have a good camera.
Go out there and shoot stuff, people. Not with guns, but with your phones. Because you don't need a good camera, is the moral of the story.
And don't have guns.
Yeah, we are for gun control.
This was the last scene we shot in the episode because we had shot the entire thing, and then Vikram runs over to my room, swings open the door, and looks at me and says, "Hey, did you get a shot in with the sunglasses?" And I'm like, "No, you gotta get one in." And like I remember being so mentally relieved ki, oh, Bombay shooting's finally done. It's been such an intense time.
It's never really done.
Yeah. And then we went
You
back.
want to go reshoot something tomorrow?
No, man, come
It
on.
really never is done for episode 4, as you'll find out in
Yeah.
the last scene.
This is one of my favorite spots on campus just because of how like menacing it looks against the sunlight. And my note to Varad, again, a huge shout out to him. I reached out to him a few days before shoot and he was game for everything that I asked him to do. In fact, the day before the screening, we really needed to reshoot one particular shot.
This one bit will come up right now.
How about we don't tell them? See if you can like figure out which one's a reshoot.
Yeah, I don't think they'll notice.
Yeah, you know. And he was game for everything and he came running with his like maroon shirt in like half an hour. Can't ask anything more from an actor. And
One of my favorite bits here.
you can probably
There.
tell while watching, but Tejas and Meeka are friends in real life. And Tejas is playing Sam's role here, who's the guy, and like their chemistry is kind of off the charts, and it really juxtaposes itself against the Siddharth Gayatri scene here, which is why it's a controversial decision, I know, but like we put in a really long instrumental as a menacing thing in the background, just to firstly kind of pull up the pacing and like fill in the spaces. But also just to show that for Bombay, emotionally, I think it is episode because she's pushing everyone away, even in this very sweet moment. And like, I think it's kind of on the nose. It's not planned, but there's like equations or like graphs drawn on the board, sprawling from her head behind. It's never that simple with Bombay as a person, right? And just because you kind of want to go out there and quote unquote explore, and this is the first time where she has like a proper love life after episode 1. There's just something a bit unnerving about how she's going out and doing things. Even in this shot, there's like the windows in the background, and I really wanted to shoot them against the windows, which meant that at times shadows fell on their faces, but I think it worked out because of post-production magic. We were very worried about the scene being too dark, but now that I see it on screen, the shadows really play into it.
I really like the unsaturated this thing also, like just look of this. It looks kind of like almost grey and edgy, but without being too edgy. Like especially this take, right? Like look how pale their faces look. And this fits in pretty well in contrast to the Sam and Bombay bits, because that seems, well, at least superficially lovey-dovey and awkward, but happily awkward, and this is just, daggers drawn out.
And we have moved away from that scene for just a couple of seconds, but also in that particular scene, Gayatri is the one in the shadows and Siddharth's the one in the light, even though he's supposed to be the antagonist in the scene. And this plays in direct opposition to how Rehan and the sun was kind of a paid actor on that day, where on that wide shot where they are on either side of the stairs, Rehan's completely in the dark and Gayatri's completely in the light for the entirety of the scene. And here, now that Gayatri is recording, it kind of like starts to blur the boundaries for her, because again she's like inheriting a certain kind of skewed morality from her elder sister here. She's kind of moving into this space she's not comfortable with, right? And that's a contrast. I won't say it was completely intentional, but like once I spotted it on set while shooting the latter scene, I was like, let's roll with it, and I'm happy with the way it turned out.
We had an uninvited guest on this shoot, a nice little pigeon, in and out, in and out. It was just there in a corner, and what portion was it? We were just ending, right? And then it just flew through, interrupted this little date, and we had to stop and we panned to the little pigeon, and now pigeon's on footage for Bombay.
And it was so regal, like it knew that it was going to be short.
I love how they like bounced off of each other in this scene as well. I mean, I'd never met Varad before this scene, but they just seemed so comfortable with each other. And then even here, like I just like the way they, bounce off of each other.
I think even with Varad, he's really good at taking notes. Like he's very open and he's willing to do like the same scene hundreds of times if it just means getting a good shot. And that kind of translates because I think at first he had just jumped into the series in the 4th episode without knowing what episode 3 looked like because he hadn't seen the episode. It hadn't premiered yet. But I just gave him like a brief background on, and then like he pulled up so well. That's what you want in an actor. This is mostly a one take shot towards the end of the last morning of shoot.
Yeah. I'm glad we were able to get that, I don't know what it was, like a speech, a rant, something, like music out of the background in the latter half of the scene. Because it was quite noisy. And I'm glad these guys would stay in character, at least in this take, while that was happening.
Dorm Olympics.
We got so many ops, man. Like, I think I stopped in the previous scene.
Just stop counting your ops. I mean, that's the point we're at now.
Like, between like Siddharth and Gayatri in the previous scene, they were selling tickets to a Char Diwali concert happening on campus a few days later, and they were blasting music. In this scene, they were blasting music for the Dom Olympics, and for the actual Char Diwali concert, they were blasting music for the kaleidoscope scene that happens a bit later. I think there was almost not a single day of shoot where we did not have...
We should have noise pollution rules on campus. I think one time someone sent an email saying, stop playing music in front of the mess, it disturbs classes.
Yeah.
And the guy was like trolled for like, I don't know, 3-4 other people. But, kind of has a point. Yeah.
And just so you have some visual reference for what's happening, me and Hiya are like reminiscing about the good old shoot days. And Vikram's there in a corner, horrified every time he sees a scene which has put him through hell.
Can't disagree. But I think a lot of, of course, I'm not really perfectly 100% satisfied with any episode, but I think I'm equally satisfied with this episode as the others, even though, yes, the editing process was kind of hell. But now that it's over, you can take a deep breath and be like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
It was. But like, but in retrospect, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
But don't you think you kind of enjoy that hell?
I was.
I think this will become like more of a therapy session than commentary if I answer that question.
Yeah. On the day of the screening, while she's deleting this.
Yeah, from behind. I was sitting in the audience for the first time for Bombay episode. And when this scene happened, there was a couple behind me. I don't know their names. I wish I did. But the girl said, I don't fucking get this girl. What is wrong with her? And I'm assuming her friend or boyfriend or whatever said, let her cook. You don't get it. And she's like, yeah, I don't. What is she doing?
She did cook by the end.
Yeah.
Also, everyone needs to know just how many cooking metaphors went around all through production.
That is what happens when Abhijato is in the production team. Bro is in the kitchen. I went to the restaurant, everyone there knew you.
This was a very awkward room to shoot in.
Yeah,
this extra pulled up a performance.
Yeah, probably one of the best actors in the episode.
Whenever we see her, we're all impressed. Yeah.
Oh, I met her a few days later, and I was telling her how like we're heaping praise on you. Watch it when it comes out on YouTube.
Yeah. This was a very awkward room to shoot in, and the funny thing is, Pooja, our other AD, went into the room, and there was this guy just studying economics, looked like a 4th year, and she just asked him, and we were like peeking in through the window for the past 10 minutes, being like, it's such a good room, but how do we get him out? Pooja just walks in and she goes, hey, we really like this room, we want to shoot in it. Do you mind like leaving? And he was like, yeah. And he left. And then we had it for the rest of the evening, and like
apart from
the concert noise,
yeah, the entire time.
I hear Char Diwali now and I want to break the fourth wall.
Damn, he was cooking with that one. He was in the kitchen for a long time.
I remember sitting very close to Ashwin while he's shooting this bit. I think he was on Mihika. And his arms just start shaking, but he's not giving up. Yeah, props to camera people, man.
Yeah.
I wanted to say this just a bit earlier as well, but two things about all the camera people without exception. They're in the credits, so please go and give them all your love. I think, first thing, even when they're trembling, particularly say someone like Ashwin, there's a scene which there's this one long video reel that he shoots, and Mika and Pranil kept trying to get it right, but they took 5 or 6 long takes over 2 minutes each, and Ashwin's hands were just shaking. I could see he couldn't take it, and then he cuts and I'm like, hey, you know what? How about you take some water, take a break? And he's like, no, I'm ready to shoot. And he just instantly pressed record before I could say action, and just went at it again. So shooting inside a cupboard, or shooting squeezed next to a pillar, or shooting against the sunlight. The camera people were insane.
Yeah.
And a lot of the frames, even though you do sit with them and set the frames with them, look at this scene, this shot for example. I really like it with most shots in the episode. And it's simple, it's not trying to do too much, but it's just about the camera people being instinctively good.
And they also always offer their own opinion on what shot they think looks good, and I think that's always, and they come up with really good shots many times.
I again, it's a really goofy thing, but Mika's on the darker side of the
of the board.
Of the board.
Abhijato, your English major is showing.
I mean, even if you don't catch it explicitly, it kind of subliminally,
so.
The maid in the middle with the oranges, damn.
Once you catch on to it, you're
Shout out to the graphics. Look at that little bit of bright red next to all of the darker red in Congress.
That was supposed to be an animation.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be an anime. It's supposed to go from left to right.
We didn't have Canva Premium.
But I mean, we were all just so tired that night. It's just yeah, just send me a PNG. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it for 3 people in the world to notice it.
There's such a neat division here between, the yeses and the noes with the motion that will come up later.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Some people will really ponder about their decision.
This is one of the few scenes where Vikram was present, and in all of the few scenes that he has been present, he just sits in a corner and does nothing, like a little...
He crosses his arms and just looks. He just looks. He's like an anthropologist. He's taking notes. What's going on?
I'm just an observer. I do not interfere.
I think in that very next scene, it was a very intense scene, and we were having a clap out moment, which is a theatrical thing to do, which is you take 3 sets of breathe ins and breathe outs, and then you do a clap out just to tell people, oh, you're switched off now, you can go and have dinner. And Vikram was there, and that was, I think, one of his rare moments where he was on set because it was his room, and he just looked incredibly confused. He's like, what? I left for 2 weeks and you turned this into a theatre troupe.
You were also sick in one of the shoots, remember? And
that was the same shoot.
Yeah, I think he was sick for the entire shoot. He was just sniffling subtly.
I'm sniffling right now also.
Yeah, so am I.
People would be shooting cameras, the script is thrown out, and in one corner Vikram's just can you pass me my cough drops?
This scene is what a lot of things come down to in the entire episode. And I think in the screening, it happened without the music in the screening, but with the music I think it adds just a bit more menace in the silences too, where once the motion for the vote goes down, there's just this hushed silence, and after the vote happens you're what just happened? And it's kind of one of those cathartic moments where it pays off not only internally but also when you see that people, oh yeah, they're split down the middle 3-3. That's the thing. And you'll find out what happens in episode 5.
Which I have no clue about. So sad. But whoever gets this far, please support my like demand for more Tanveer Rehan scenes. Because look at that, I had so much fun shooting that, particularly just playing off of Vatsal.
Can we have a shout out for the pan?
Yeah, of
Shout
course.
out to the
Shout
pan.
Shout out to all pans. Sauce pans, frying pans, this pan. Oh, and here we are at the pondering.
Yeah, the pondering.
Bro pondered.
It's so funny because this is probably one of those. This is probably the most takes we did for any scene. And this was just like pan, and we kept doing it until I got a shot that I was like, okay, I'm happy with. And then we did a few more extra ones. And again, I think it really works out because, sure, it's a bit shaky, but it kind of takes you internally, and then you cut directly from a close up on Rehan to Bombay. And the music is beeping along right now, and it's kind of a happy coincidence because it was not composed keeping the scene in mind, but it goes from this low orchestral synths to like these beeps in tune with the words, and then they bleed into the first scene of this. Probably, I would say, the most intense scene perhaps in the entire series.
Pretty much my favorite in this episode, definitely.
Yeah, like you know, all the conversations about the parents and who is in control of what. Like, it's an intersection of the plot and the emotional exposition and who they are as people and what decisions they make. Bombay, by doubling down on just continuing those patterns of trauma with her parents, which are implied by kind of slapping Gayatri at the end of this. Spoiler alert. And Gayatri breaking away from that influence. So it all like neatly comes down to this one pivotal scene.
And it subtly like gets more and more intense until you realize they're actually screaming at each other, and I don't think it creeps up on you, which I really like. I think the writing for this was excellent as well.
The acting, the camera work, it all just worked out. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but this is where the parallels start to come into the Rehan scene, because they're on either side of their beds right now. Even though we did not use the wide shot too much, like, you know, you can visualize a space where they're on either end, and they're like, oh, why are we speaking so far apart from each other? But this is where the scene starts. And I kind of like tried to make these parallels, firstly because these are the two most talk heavy scenes, but also because just like Rehan's trying to be like the father figure suddenly entering Gayatri's life, even here this is a long term another father figure that she has in her life, and Bombay's kind of trying to manipulate her too. So I think visually those parallels play out. And she's being so condescending here. I mean I wrote this dialogue, but come on, what are you doing? And you can see where Bombay is coming from, I think, by this point of the episode, where she's doing what she thinks is the best. And again, like, Gayatri moves away from Rehan, and then Rehan gets up and goes close to Gayatri. Here too, you see the same action unfolding, and it's the same low angle, where Mika's made to look almost unnaturally tall, just to, you know, put up a imposing figure. And the scene ends after the small bit of violence with close-ups on each of them, like the Rehan scene as well. So, you know, I planned the scenes accordingly.
The acting here is just so good.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say because I'm just like, I can't even hear anything, but I'm just focusing on what, like, how they're going at it. And the low angle also just makes it look so dramatic.
And it is so funny because I remember getting their first confrontation in, and there was Ayushi and Rashi on either side with the camera work, and both Pooja and Hiya were there for the shoot that day. And after the first take with the slab, I was like, I think they're kind of done. Like, that was so good. And then they were like, no, we can do just a little bit more. And we had like 4 iterations of this where I think Tamanna was slapped violently each time. And I think each time it got better, which was incredible considering where they started from. So you were talking about the challenges of shooting back to back, right? I think this was shot on a Tuesday after we had already shot with them on a weekend and then Monday.
Yeah.
But this was the day you guys did the cool down exercise too, and it makes sense now.
Yeah, you know, you kind of got a cool down.
Weren't you saying that you could hear it from outside as well?
The shouting
good,
in the cool down.
And then you could hear the silence from outside too after the big hit.
You could hear the silence. I guess that speaks to the quality of acting. And I didn't even notice it, but I just remembered Rashi tiptoeing closer to the actors, and I was like, I wonder how that's gonna look. And it's just like, not shaky cam, but like just moving closer and closer to their faces because,
It's a lot of momentum, like
yeah.
both in the scene, the camera work, everything.
Yeah.
Even though it's a one take, it doesn't get monotonous. even
Yeah,
for a
because of
second.
how
This whole
dynamic
thing,
the camera
yeah.
is. Because it starts off as almost an over the shoulder looking towards Gayatri, but then it kind of adjusts.
Oh.
And that's the money shot.
I love the cut.
Yeah.
Why were we compelled to cut?
Hey, you know.
Because it looks really damn cool.
Mm.
And then you get this like Tamanna only bit for a few seconds.
Yeah,
where-
and
Look
she's
at the
out
acting.
of
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
and she's out of focus for a bit, and it
Yeah.
really, really serves the scene.
Oh,
I can like
just-
speak about just this for an hour, like just
Look
this
at that.
scene.
yeah.
My god. And like every time we cut, she's just standing there with tears in her eyes. And she's like, I'm fine, let's go again, let's go again.
Yeah. Just impeccable, like some of the best acting I've ever seen. I think in this episode, like if you told me that these were paid actors, like just
Would buy it.
yeah. In fact, I think throughout the episode, there's just a bit of like comfort within themselves as actors for everyone involved.
You could say they put their whole bum.
Nah,
No,
that's not good
yeah,
in the commentary.
no, that's...
Nah. Again, here I've got to draw a line with you too. Nah.
I will say one thing though. This was my first time directing, and I was thinking of what approach to take. And except for the trees and the wide angles and whatever, one thing I really wanted to focus on was just trying to keep to the basics and like let the emotions and the story do the work, because I think there was so much of it going on throughout the episode that all of this happening with like say experimental shaky cameras and zoom outs and like weird angles, I think would have confused people a little
Very
too much.
disorienting, yeah.
Which is I think throughout the episode, and this is where I think it pays off, at least in my mind, where you just like keep it simple and you almost let the space and the footage do the work for you instead of trying to do too much. And yeah, it's kind of interesting because, like I said, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. I annotated things and whatnot, but
Y'all should have seen his script. Sticky notes flying out, other bits of paper stapled onto it, marks.
Binding. Don't
Bro,
forget the binding.
bound, spiral bound.
that's the bare minimum, guys.
That script is a relic now.
Yeah, I made my AD sign it, so it's not like a nice memento.
All of these guys looking at Rehan looks like a cult with like apostles, except for like the one guy rubbing his forehead. But like yeah, apart from that,
And keep in mind, this is supposed to be at 6 a.m. Like, Rihan's dragged these people out.
Yeah. One of my favorite. Oh, there we go.
there
We
go.
woke up at earlier than 7 to shoot this particular
Worth
shot.
it.
Completely worth it. So worth it.
We should just do more morning shoots next time. Like just maybe let's just schedule all the episodes, all the shooting in the morning only.
See, I am fine.
After, I think, episode 3, which was shot primarily during the evenings, because it was mostly indoors, I think this moving outdoors with so many morning shoots meant that actors would come in and, like, at one time, Pooja handed a cup of coffee from the mess and, like, one spare banana and shoved it towards someone. Oh, this is your breakfast. And then we just shot the montage. Anyway, returning to the shoot, I think her, in an earlier episode, had, like, kind of put the blanket back on Gayatri, and here she kind of doesn't do the decision. And also shout out to the pink notebook, which was there sitting in the background alongside the soft toy, which has made a cameo in all episodes. I think it really represents something so innate about Gayatri's wholesomeness. Here, do you want to talk about the Tanvi side of the montage, and when did we shoot it?
So you would like to think that they were shot along a similar time, right?
Or even
The
scripted
same
like
scene.
this.
Yeah. You know, like, put a lot of thought into this. But this was shot around 12 hours before the premiere of this episode. All of us were running on little to no sleep. And yeah, which is why my clothes are very different, because they've been consistent throughout the episode except for this. And we had a random idea to just, shoot it. And it is the Bombay core.
Yeah.
Shooting things 12 hours before premiere.
Yeah, but it was so worth it. I mean, this is a much better choice than just the original of just Bombay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing that you can do it at like 6 a.m. on the day of.
Technically, as it should be.
Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
something that's so fun about doing this kind of filmmaking.
Mm. And we're done.
Yeah, thank you for listening so far.
Thank you for watching all these episodes. We hope you have seen the others as well, and we hope you'll see everything we make in the future. Bye-bye.
Bye.